thorough conversation about the many issues that are priorities for each of our countries. The President and I discussed a fundamental belief that most people don't want to leave home. They don't want to leave the place where they grew up, where the language they know is spoken, where their culture that they know is present and has been, in this case, for centuries. Most people don't want to leave where their grandmother lives. And when they do, it is usually for one of two reasons. Because they are fleeing some type of harm, or because to stay means that they cannot provide for their essential needs and the needs of their family. The President and I share a firm belief that our responsibility and our capacity is to give people a sense of hope. We talked extensively about this through the many conversations we have had, including today. The power of hope, the ability that each of our governments has to give people a sense that help is on the way, to let them know that they are seen, that they are heard, that we see their capacity, but we also understand their challenges and their need for support and the resources that any human being needs to be able to survive, much less thrive. So that was fundamentally the spirit behind the conversation that we had. And as I mentioned, Mr. President, I believe that our world is interconnected and interdependent, and certainly the most recent issues that have plagued our globe, including the pandemic, have made that point clear. Our world is interconnected and interdependent, and therefore what happens abroad is of priority to the United States of America. And that is why I am in Guatemala today. And that is why President Joe Biden will travel to Europe later this week. We are renewing our relationships around the globe and our presence around the world. In fact, just last week, I shared with the President that the United States will provide, as a first donation, 500,000 vaccines to Guatemala. Again, understanding the interdependence, the people of Guatemala and the people of the United States. And before we get to the questions, I just want to highlight several of those agreements. First, on the issue of security, is probably one of the highest priorities for each of our nations. The President and I agreed to continue our work to manage migration at Guatemala's northern and southern borders. We also discussed illicit drugs that are being smuggled and humans who are being trafficked across those borders, undermining the security of both the people of Guatemala and the people of the United States. Our nations have collaborated on these issues, and we will create a smuggling and human trafficking task force, which will work with local law enforcement to stop these crimes. And I have personally worked on these cases in my career, and can say that when we see some of the most vulnerable in our country, we will launch a Young Women's Empowerment Initiative to increase education and economic opportunities for girls and women. Understanding here in Guatemala, there is a rich tradition of girls and women being a part of the culture and the economy with extraordinary skills, and therefore the ability to thrive when seen as someone who can be the source of investment for the economic growth of the entire community. We will also invest in agribusiness and affordable housing and supporting entrepreneurs. President Giammattei has mentioned to me many times today and in previous conversations about his priority around what can happen in terms of the planting of trees and what that can mean in terms of ecology and in our environment. Well, recently, there's been a lot of talk about what happened here in Guatemala to, again, uplift folks who may have been overlooked or neglected, but also uplift the natural capacity and resources of this beautiful country. Which brings me to our third area of discussion and agreement. The President and I discussed the importance of anti-corruption and the importance of an independent judiciary. The United States will create an anti-corruption task force, the first of its kind. Our Justice Department, our Treasury Department, and our State Department will work together to conduct investigations and train local law enforcement to conduct their own. Our task force will support Guatemalan prosecutors, including FICI, and listen, no corruption. Corruption does not know borders, and we want to make sure that this is about transnational crime, and we have to follow the money. I want to be clear to folks in this region who are thinking about making that dangerous trek to the United States-Mexico border. Do not come. Do not come. The United States will continue to enforce our laws and secure our border. There are legal methods by which migration can and should occur. But we, as one of our priorities, will discourage illegal migration. And I believe if you come to our border, you will be turned back. So let's discourage our friends, our neighbors, our family members from embarking on what is otherwise an extremely dangerous journey, where in large part the only people who benefit are coyotes.
Señora Simon Sanders y la secretaria de Comunicación Social de la Presidencia, Patricia Letona, darán la palabra a los medios de comunicación que nos acompañan.